The time is now. The time is now. Louder. The time is now. Woo! Bonsoir, France for Bernie. I'm Penny, and I want to wish a warm welcome, especially to Larry Sanders and to his partner Janet, and a record number of France for Bernie volunteers, and all of whom are dedicated to ensuring that Bernie Sanders is the next president of the United States. Welcome to all. Just a quick word about format and housekeeping before we get to the main part of the program. On housekeeping, this is going to be more, well, first on format. This is going to be more like an informal Paris town hall. We're going to have opening remarks from Larry, followed by interview questions presented by Claudia. Then we're going to have some announcements, including how you can get involved in France for Bernie. Then we're going to open up the floor for your questions and discussion. And finally, at the end, we hope you'll join us up front for a big group photo, and then socializing together to raise a glass for Bernie and his win in 2020. A few housekeeping details. Your cooperation is greatly appreciated in several things. Not shouting out, not respecting one another throughout, waiting to be recognized, and also, since our venue is free from Patrick's Le Ballon Vert, which we greatly appreciate, we ask that you buy a drink, have a meal. Their food is very good. Don't forget to pay, and of course, don't forget to tip. So, Larry Sanders. Larry is the Green Party England and Wales spokesperson for health and social care. He's Bernie's, or Bernard as he calls him, older brother, and he has lived in the UK since 1969. Larry's a retired social worker and lecturer in social care law. He studied at Brooklyn College, Oxford University, and he also holds a doctorate in law from Harvard Law School. Larry has spent his entire career advocating for people with disabilities and their carers. As many of you know, Larry was a delegate to the 2016 Democratic National Convention, where he cast Democrats Abroad's votes for his brother. Claudia.
Oh, God.
I want to read one convention with names of parents, Eli Sanders, Dorothy Swift, for example. They did not have easy lives, they did not get They love community, the Frank and Joe will be especially proud that Bernie's been doing that business. This with enormous pride, so I cast my vote for Bernie Sanders.
And without further ado, a warm welcome for Larry Sanders.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all. I'll probably cry again. I spent the day before that vowing to myself how I wasn't going to cry, and then when I opened my mouth, the tears came before the words. It's really very good to be here. This is a really important election. Most of what I'm going to say everybody here knows, but it is an astonishingly difficult and I think frightening time in human history. It's not a time for despair, but it is a time to take it seriously. I was interviewed on a couple of French programs today, and they were very nice journalists and asked fair questions and the rest of it. But I realized the tone was wrong. The tone was, oh, here's an interesting election. Here's somebody who's got a bit of an interesting connection to it, and we're going to have a little TV or radio program about it. And it was only afterwards I thought, that's wrong. We're not in that position. This is not just an election with interesting characters and all the rest of that stuff. This is really, really very big. And we know this, perhaps the starting point is Trump. We've had some really bad presidents. But Trump is in a league of his own, and his capacity for disregarding law, his total insensitivity to the needs of the country, his racism, his lying are frightening. But on top of that, we have a genuine crisis in our climate. Again, everybody except a moron like Trump knows that.
Hey Larry, say it a little louder.
Okay, sorry.
Say Trump is a jerk.
Do you think that's what I think? Oh. So, yes, the climate. I mean, we had that, there was another jerk in Australia, their Prime Minister, explaining how there was nothing to worry about in the climate, while there's, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of acres of Australia were going up in flames. Saying Trump is not the only one. It is a world failure so far to take seriously what we know needs to be done. And Bernard's Green New Deal is such a good document. I'm in the Green Party in UK. We've been making this story for 30 years. If we'd started 30 years ago, it would have been a battle. We'd have solved the climate problem without any great dislocation. But we didn't start 30 years ago. We didn't start 10 years ago. And we haven't really started yet. But Bernard's Green New Deal is astonishing. First, it's green, which means that we're going away from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And it turns out that it's being easier than expected. With the turbines, particularly those that offshore, but the ones onshore as well, solar energy, we haven't even really tapped many of the other sources. So we can do that. If we're serious about it, we can do that. And Bernard's plan does that in 10 years, which is what the scientists say we would need in order to stay below 2 degrees increase. And we know roughly what, well, probably don't know, but we fear what's going to happen at 2 degrees increase. We've seen what's happened at a tiny increase all around the world in floods and droughts and fires. The New Deal, though, is also there. And it's not just a new deal, it's a new deal as in Franklin Roosevelt. It's a use of the full power of the government to make the changes that need to be made. And without this bullshit worry about where's the money going to come from. Okay, so the planet is going down the tubes, but how are you going to pay for it? So, that's the level. Yes, I was I'm on television all the time. I was on a morning television program in the UK yesterday morning, and one of the people there, a journalist, came up with exactly that point. No, we can't afford it, she said. Anyhow, it's not just that the plan puts the money in. The plan says that we go ahead and do it. And what we do is not only transform the energy supply, but we protect and work more than protect the people who are going to be damaged by the loss of their incomes, by the loss of their jobs. There will be enormous dislocation. This is not a small business that we're dealing with. This is very big. And you'll start with coal miners and oil rig workers and then move on to people who drive, which is going to be affected for a living. So if you don't pay attention to those people's needs, two things happen. First of all, it's wrong. There's no reason in the world why those people should suffer. They didn't make money out of it. They didn't make the decisions. They're just trying to make a living. And the second thing that you have to know is it can't work. If you don't bring your whole population with you, well, in France, people will know better than I what happened when Macron tried to put the money on fuel, and he had the response. And at first he was saying, oh no, we're doing the right thing. Of course, we're environmentalists. And then people said, yeah, you're worried about the end of the world, we're worried about the end of the month. And if you don't worry about the end of the month as well as the end of the world will be the result. So Bernard is probably the only major politician in the world that I've followed, and as a Green Party person, I have been following this stuff for a long time, that meets the need of the world and not the needs of his next fucking election.
Yeah.
And the second big area of Bernard's campaigning, again, part of it touches me very particularly closely, is the growth of inequality and poverty. And we know, and I 10 years ago I saw in a book a friend had written the most astonishing graphs, and I hadn't grasped it. Bernard had grasped it long before, but I hadn't. The gap between the rich and the poor in income and in wealth has grown since the mid-70s, more than 40 years of disparity. And we didn't start off in America or England or any place else as great egalitarian states. There were huge gaps, but things had gotten better between the end of the war and the mid-70s, 30 years of relative prosperity for many people, and that came to a halt. And year in and year out, with blips, of course, you've got the same pattern establishing itself. What was the point of it? The point was very simple. The people who had the power, directly through their companies, indirectly through control of the governments, decided that the move towards equality that had taken root was not good for them. And they won. They won the battle then. The Reagans and the Thatchers, and you will know many more names, I'm sure. They won the battle. It was a class war of a classical type, and they won it. And of course, Bernard is on issue after issue. Not merely that he said we're going to reverse that shift of wealth and income, but he's come up with the detailed ways, one after another, of practical things that you have to do. Okay, you can't have a reasonable society unless you have a reasonable minimum wage. If somebody goes to work, they need to earn enough to live on, right? Why not? So he's got the $15 an hour minimum wage. Actually, I think he's going to have to put that up. But nonetheless, compared to what goes before it, it's a gigantic step forward. Within that whole area, there's the concept of the job guarantee. Generations of people like us and our parents and grandparents have feared what happens if the local factory closes down? What happens if my job goes? What happens if the national economy dips for a while? What do I do? And you're thrown on the heat, you get a minimum amount to keep alive if you're lucky, and so on. So what's the solution to that? Not difficult. Guarantee of a job paying at least the minimum wage, working for the government, doing useful things. There are tons of useful things. Everybody in this room knows things that they wish their government was doing. And you don't do anything without the people to do it, and the people to do it are there. We have them. If they may move over from more crap jobs. They may not be bottling water anymore, or whatever is your particular thing that you think is wasteful and stupid. So And it goes on, but the one I wanted to focus on for a minute was the Medicare for All. Now, the Medicare for All is very important politically in a way, because Medicare for All, getting rid of all the private insurance companies is essential, and any politician who hasn't grasped that, or who is pretending not to have grasped that, is not deserving of consideration. And the background to that is, there is, every year in the United States, the insurance company bureaucracies that they require, both in their own employers and in the medical establishments and the hospitals and whatnot, cost an additional excess $600 billion. Can you imagine what that would mean for a healthcare system? Everybody outside the system is in. Everybody inadequately covered is in. You have the best coverage in the world. You have what Bernard has put into his Medicare for All. You have long-term care. So it's not just what happens when you're in the hospital. It's what happens to give you a chance for a decent life, even if you're disabled. And so that $600 billion. Anybody who pretends that you can't change the system, that you can change the system, that you can have a decent system without getting your hands on that $600 billion is utterly wrong. And it was very embarrassing to see that all those candidates, one after another, dropped the Medicare for All. And I'm disappointed that Elizabeth Warren, who in many ways is a powerful, good politician, got frightened out of part of it anyhow. And hopefully she'll come back. But that's, and the reason I said that that's kind of near my heart is as the healthcare and social care have been my thing for main object of work for 25 years. And as a spokesperson for the Green Party, that's my area of care. And Bernard's plan puts us ahead, would put the United States ahead instead of disgracefully behind. And that's the final thing I'm going to mention, is the thing that hangs over everybody who's got any brains, is war and peace. And we, without pretending that I know anything about each of the hotspots in the world, we all know that there's a lot of stuff happening, and we all know that they're made worse by having this thin-skinned, self-obsessed moron in the White House. And a good person, Bernard in the White House, is not going to solve these problems, but at least we have a chance to get out of it without massive war. And we have had, the United States has been a prime example of excess intervention in the rest of the world. Bernard is, I think, the only one of the politicians who has said it. It's not just Iraq, which by now everybody agrees was crazy and expensive and brutal and cost so many lives of many nations, actually. But it goes back behind that. And he goes back about the decision to run South America and Central America and the coups in Iran that are the direct cause of the constant unrest and difficulty in that country, going back to the CIA run coup that overthrew a democratically elected government whose crime was that it wanted to have the proceeds from oil go back to that country rather than to the United States and Britain in the 1950s. So Bernard is the one who knows that, is willing to say that. He's got a steady grip. He's not obsessed. Well, I'm not going to go into that. We have an example of a difference, a nearly total difference. So we face some of those dire